Hey guys, how you doing? I am cleaning my wood stove today, and this video isn't really too much about how to clean a wood stove, although maybe you learned something, I don't know. But it's more just to give you guys a tour of what an older wood stove looks like. So we bought our house in 2000. The stove I'm going to show you was already here, and I really don't know exactly how old it is. There's plenty of stoves a lot older. If I had to guess, I'd say it was probably from the 80s. But the stove I have now does not have secondary combustion where there's tubes in the top of it. And some of the newer ones now will also have some kind of like a catalytic converter in there to help burn the secondary fumes. This is just an old school wood stove that's a metal box with a metal box inside. This is the stove, and I've already stripped it down and gotten all the stuff out of it. And what I do is I've got my Festool vacuum with two 40-foot hoses or two 20-foot hoses on it. So my vacuum is actually outside right now, but the whole time I'm working on the stove, I keep the vacuum running, and then I keep a respirator on to make sure I don't, breathe in any of this junk. But the way it works is you've got these fire bricks in the bottom here, and then there's these pieces that align the wall in the back, and then there's a baffle over there, which I had to have remade, that goes in the top. So when the heat of the fire comes up, it comes forward first, then it has to go over the baffle and towards the back. And if you look inside, hopefully you guys are seeing, so it's got all these spikes in the top of it, and then there's that hole on the roof, just so you can look in there, and I'll actually vacuum out on top of the baffle over the winter because I'll get an inch or two of ash there, and then that's the exhaust pipe. And this stove is made by a company named Dovre. I'm not sure this is coming in or not, but it's Dovre. And I've looked them up online, and I can't find them anymore. We have about an 1,800 square foot house, and unfortunately, the way that this stove is set up, it's in the back of the house. I put some ducting to help with circulation, but I just can't circulate the heat. But this stove, if I had good circulation, would be, I almost want to say, more than enough for an 18 or 1,900 square foot house. And you're basically putting 3 logs at a time, under 30 degrees, you're putting, every 2 hours, you're putting more wood on. And then, if you want to do a long burn, you could probably get 5 or 6 logs in there tightly stacked. You bring the burn down, you run it, all the air vents open for 10 or 15 minutes, cut all the air vents in half for 10 or 15 minutes, and then I just leave the 2 air vents in the front door open, and the main air vent is on the side, and that'll give me the long burn where I will get, 4 hours of decent heat and then like 6 hours of spark. And sometimes it'll be enough to start it the next day. Sometimes there won't. It really depends the type of wood. I was burning the stove last night, and, briefly, I wasn't in the same room as the stove, but briefly I just smelt a little bit of a smoky smell. And whenever that happens, there could be several causes, but I immediately think, geez, is my chimney clean? So I decided to, shut the stove down and clean the chimney before I do anything else. And I will say that, sometimes if you put a log close to the air vents, the smoke will get out. Other times, I've noticed if the air temperature is like 50 to 60 degrees, and it's damp out, sometimes the exhaust from the chimney won't go up. And I'd like to say windy days, but once you get the draft going, I don't really think I have trouble on windy days with a draft. And I guess that's maybe one of the benefits of the older wood stoves is you're releasing so much of that superheated air into the atmosphere that draft is going to go no matter what. Needless to say, I decided to come out today and clean the chimney, and the first thing I just wanted to show you was this soot eater rotary chimney cleaning brush. which basically you put it on a drill. It's got a head over here, which is kind of like weed whacker filament. I mean, I'm sure nobody would say it was weed whacker filament, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. And then it's got these rods that are about 4 feet long each, and there's a little, you just push this little pin on the drill, take it off, and you can add rods as you go. So it takes me, you can see it takes me 5 of these rods to get to the top of the chimney. This is the second time I'm going to be using this system. And back, in the day, all that mess on the inside of the house I would take apart. But now with this, I can just feed this through the stuff inside the house. I'll put the shop vac on and clean all that. But, I'll also just show you, this is what I took off. This is the base of the chimney, so this is all the stuff that's, that's inside the chimney. And then I want to see if I can just show you what my creosote looks like, which I've never really had that nasty black drippy creosote. But hopefully we can get you guys in and just show you. Well, here. There's very powdery, easy to remove creosote there. But as you look up, that's what my chimney looks like, which it definitely needs to be cleaned. But, this is going to come off really, really easily. And I've never had... I always burn well-seasoned wood. I've never had any issues whatsoever with sticky creosote. This is the little tool they give you to push the pin in on that drill. I'm going to go ahead and clean the chimney out, see if I can get everything back together. I'm not going to show you how I clean the chimney, because even though I've done it many times, I'm horrible at it. What's happening today on a good day would probably take me about 3 hours by the time I go get the supplies, set everything up, clean the chimney, clean up the mess. But it's probably more like a 4 hour, half a day proposition. I don't mind taking the time to do it. If I see anything whatsoever that concerns me, I would definitely call a chimney sweep. All right, guys, so it's about 40 minutes later, and I ran the rods up, and this is what I got out of the chimney. Again, I don't think this is that bad. I put the vacuum in the house to get the dust. So luckily this is all the heavy stuff that fell out. I've done this where I've tried to vacuum from this side and the dust just gets all over the place. I think this will be fairly easy to clean up. But that's what you're looking at right there. And then there's a little bit more that fell on this little shelf here, which coincidentally, if I go 5 rods up to this shelf, that's when I'm going to hit the cap. But let's see if we can get you in the chimney here. It's just a night and day difference. Look at that, right? Look at the difference. And that fell off right away. There was no fight or anything. It just came off. As soon as you spin that thing in there, it just came right off. So I'm feeling much better about that. So I just did 1 rod from the inside here, and that was enough to get me past the damper there. But what happened was I was using 3 rods, and I could come down this tube and down this way, but I kept getting, stuck. Literally, I would get twisted around the damper there, and luckily I thought I was going to have to take it off, but if I just moved the damper, it would unstick itself. I tried reversing as well. But the moral of the story is I'm just going to basically mark to go 1.5 rods in from that side, and then just get the rest from this side, because I can push past the damper with this rod. So, that'll get me without getting stuck on it. I don't know why, but the shorter rod is easier. And I'll just see if I can get you guys in here and show you. So hopefully you guys are seeing up past the damper there, but everything is perfectly good on this end as well. So I think this is one of those cases where setting everything up actually takes longer than doing the work, because it really only took me 45 minutes tops to actually do the brushing part of it. Whereas, you know, setting up my drop cloths, setting up my vacuum, taking everything out of the stove, cleaning everything off the stove, that actually took longer than the physical cleaning. I decided to do a little bit of maintenance on the stove during this round, and I figure I'll actually show you this to anybody that may have an older wood stove. So this is the baffle from the stove, and you can see, you know, the heat through the years basically causes it to crack. So I took it to one welder at one point, and he tried to weld it. But what happens is the metal, with all the heat and cool cycles, the grain of the metal gets messed up, and you basically can't do anything with it. So I tried a different welder, and he actually said, well, why don't we just make another piece, which I never really thought about. So I think I've had this on for at least a year, maybe a year and a half, but he basically just built, you know, another baffle for the top. And it's a pretty thick piece of metal. And you see how the old one has these little pieces here that'll catch, we'll show you in a minute. So, you know, he put that on. And so after a year and a half, all I'm noticing is there's a little bit of bending right here. Just a touch, but I mean, worst case, we can always build another one. You know, it wasn't cheap for the welder to come up with this idea, but now that I know how to build it, I mean, I can weld, so this is a piece that I definitely could assemble if I had to, or if I wanted to. So that's one idea I wanted to show you guys. And then over here, you know, this baffle, or shield, whatever you want to call it, you know, it's got this crack going down the back. So he also built me this one, which I didn't put in yet because it wasn't horrible, but I just wanted to have something in case it ever went. So the way this works is the protruding part touches the back of the stove, so there's an airspace there. And he built this out of I would almost venture to say that's 3/8 of an inch plate there. So that's going nowhere. So if you've got an old stove, I guess I just wanted to plant the seed that as long as the cast iron on the outside doesn't go bad, and because we're doing our regular maintenance, hopefully it won't, you can always rebuild the baffles, or hopefully you can rebuild the baffles. The design here, I think, is more made so they could use thinner metals, you know, with it's got the swales in it, the waves in it, whereas the straight metal is going to work perfectly fine. You just need a thicker piece of metal. But to replace this stove, I don't even know how much it would cost, but a lot of money. That's all I know. Once I get these in, I need to go get some more fire bricks too. All right, guys. Well, I'm not sure where I left off yesterday, but it was getting late, and I had to go buy some of these fire bricks. And the store I went to, you know, I went to one of the big box stores, and they didn't have any. So then this morning, I went to a mom and pop shop, and both of them had them. I'm sure there's a lesson there somewhere. So I got some fire bricks in the bottom, some nice new ones that aren't cracked. We got the new piece of metal in the back there. And I just want to show you, if we take a look inside the stove over here, you see this back corner. So you see this piece here. You see right there. So the baffle on the top, basically that one piece of metal. So you see there's like that one piece of strap there that touches the stove. That's how that stays on. So in the back of the stove here, right up here, there's a, you know, where the square is, this rests on these two back walls. So that kind of holds it up. So it's basically just held in by gravity. There are no screws or anything, which is good because you want things to have some movement when the stove heats up and cools down. And then again, I did get the fire bricks in. I had to cut one. I got a little bit of extra space over here, but I had to cut one, which I just tucked in here out of the way. And there will be a lot of fly ash gathering. Pretty much, I never open the front doors once I start burning, except to clean it out. So the front door's closed. This just twists over, and then to put the final twist on it, you just grab a pair of pliers and there you go. You twist, but you don't break. Okay. All the loading of the wood I go through the side here. It's very easy. There's plenty of a draft, so not much ash comes out. And as far as the glass goes, I mean, this glass, no matter how hot I burn the fire, within a day the glass is going to be cloudy. I would pretty much have to clean this glass daily when I start the fire to keep it clean, which I don't do. And that is kind of one of the benefits of the newer stoves, is that they do, I think a lot of the newer ones, they bring the cold air in on top of the window so it washes across the glass and cleans all that creosote off. Yesterday I did get some of the stove polish out, and what you do is you just get a damp cloth and you take a wire brush and wire brush any rust on there, and then you put the stove polish on with a damp cloth, and then they say you can go back and buff it. I didn't really notice a difference when I went back and buffed it to make it look good. And that is one thing I do want to say is some of the newer stoves, they paint them, but I kind of like just the stove black because if something happens, you're not dinging paint, you maybe have a little bit of rust, you wire brush it off and put more stove polish on. So I don't know, I'm sure the new paints are great, but just, I like the look of stove polish and the ease of maintenance of stove polish. And then yesterday, or today, I did go out, there were a couple screws missing in my stove pipe above, so I replaced those. And what we're going to do now is I'm just going to light a fire. One thing you'll notice is if you use the stove polish is it's going to either stink really bad, or if you use too much, it's going to start smoking. So you want to make sure you have a box fan in the window in the same room close to the stove. My wife is at the grocery store right now, so I'm going to try to do this before she gets back. And I'm going to make sure there's no animals in the room, because this can really stink and be pretty nasty when it's burning off. Well, it's 6 to 8 hours since the last time I showed you the stove, and I've been burning it ever since. And it probably took 2 to 3 hours for the stove polish to kind of, burn off or degas. So I actually opened like 4 windows around here, and then I had 2 fans in the windows blowing things away. But if you use that stove polish, just again, make sure no one's home and you got the windows open and you're blowing those fumes outside, because it's just a nasty smell. Otherwise, it's 26 degrees outside right now, and inside the room right now it's about 83. And I know you guys are seeing that this one window's black. I clean the windows, and sometimes after I clean, there's less airflow there, so something has to happen. I don't really know what, but eventually that'll clean off. But like I said earlier, eventually both these windows will pretty much look the way they looked when we started, which was, there's you can see through them, but there's some gray ash on them. I did go online and look at some of the stoves with secondary combustion, and they really all do look wonderful, but I just I don't really have the kind of money to to invest in one right now. So we're just going to keep burning what we got and try and take good care of it. So that's going to pretty much wrap this one up, folks. Hopefully you got something out of it, or maybe you just got to see, you know, how wood stoves used to be made. I'm pretty sure they've been making the stoves to the higher EPA standards for quite a while now. And again, I do think, you know, at some point, I like the ones, not the catalytic wood stoves, but the ones with the secondary combustion, the air tubes in the top. So if I ever do pull the trigger, that's the way I'd go. And I definitely would try to find one that has, you know, the longer burn time, because it would be really nice to, you know, to have the stove going through the night and to have the heat through the night as well. Even though my stove doesn't burn through the night, all the heat that's absorbed in the house and the cast iron, it's not like we wake up in the morning and the house is frigid, but this room in the middle of the winter is probably going to be down to 60 to 65 degrees by the time we wake up in the morning if we don't have the heat turned on. Anyways, folks, what I'm going to do is I'll put a link to the brush I use to clean the stove polish, or anything else I may or may not have discussed in the video down below. It's an Amazon link, so if you click on it, I'll get some kind of a commission to help support the channel. And then if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Thanks for watching today, folks, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. It's kind of neat when you get the fire nice and hot, it'll actually burn off the soot on the door. So you see how the left window there, the soot is all burning off. And I've actually got to turn the stove down now because I am getting into the red zone. So we're going to go ahead and do that.